I am actually, I've been really praying about some stuff recently about what do we do? How do we help believers? How do we help people who are just struggling right now? And I've been thinking about talking to you for quite some time.
Yeah.
So anyways, besides that, I want to get into a holy mosh pit with you again sometime.
Oh,
And,
tell me when and where. I'll be there.
come on, I know you will.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not enough of that going around.
There's not. There's
We need
barely
that
anything
one.
happening.
Yeah,
We'll figure it out.
we will soon. And by the way, I enjoyed the Zoom event or whatever with your home meetings and you split into rooms and stuff.
Yeah.
That was really good. Do you do that still regularly?
We are doing it now, not quite as regularly because we actually have some in-person meetings, a lot more in-person meetings, but we are going to be doing them periodically, probably monthly, because it can be really good if there's real intent with it.
Yeah.
But too much Zoom, makes you kind of tired.
But you know what? It helped me turn the corner into Zoom land because I've been doing too much except some business stuff, and that's kind of dry.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, I like this. This would be good. Great people in the room, by the way.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, you know what? Just to help people understand who you are, just so they understand a little bit about, I know you more as a friend than I do anything else. And love you and love your heart for the kingdom. To me, those are the most important things. So
yes.
Tell us what's up. Who are you?
Are we recording now?
It's recording. I'll clip it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you one thing. I don't know what format you'd like. I can ramble on a lot about labor law in general and the mandate specifically, but if I start wandering, you can interrupt and pose any questions you want.
I have some questions.
Good.
That some I'm sure will be fairly easy to answer. Would you like to start with the questions?
Well,
and then ramble?
That's fine with me, but I have to say, I think at the outset, I have to give that disclaimer that this cannot be legal advice. That this is not the right setting to give legal advice. I can give a lot of information, but they've got to kind of pursue their own lawyer if they think they need a lawyer. So I just want to make sure that people don't misunderstand and then they go do something based on an incomplete statement.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we'll probably repeat that through there, either in a text or something, that it's not legal advice.
Good. And I thought maybe once in the beginning, once in the middle, in case people come late.
Yep.
Yeah. I really have a high value on not misleading people or confusing them. So it's a good thing to do. All right. Well.
So tell us who you are.
Well, my name's Paul Hedges. I live in Virginia. Been here for 30 some years. I can give you the long version. Let me give you the short one. I've been practicing law since 1989. Except for a brief hiatus when I went to Mozambique. But 2 years later, I came back and I've been doing pretty much the same thing now for a long time. I went to Regent University Law School, their first class that they had their first year of law school, 3 years. And so I think more importantly is this issue of workplace mandates, vaccine mandates has caught my attention immediately. Actually, COVID has brought a lot of legal challenges that nobody really knew what to do with. For example, how does the governor have power to issue these edicts? Are they even lawful? They're not law, but they're whatever they are. And so there've been challenges popped up all over the country. But now with the mandate issue, it's just the nation is on fire with litigation and lawsuits. And whether you work for the federal government or private government, and whether you're doing a class action suit or whatever, there's suits popping up everywhere. And now legislatures are busy to try and craft new law. I think it's Texas that just passed something, there's an executive order there that you can't make a mandate for vaccines. So this makes lawyers nervous when the law is in such flux and different courts in different states are coming up with different rulings, different fact patterns emerge, different scenarios. But there are some things that are generally true, and I'm happy to give you my 2 cents on what might be helpful in your situation.
Sure. This will probably be watched by people all across the states. I mean, some probably overseas are going to watch it. That's not going to really help them a whole lot, but for here anyways, and in some places it may help them.
Right.
And just to reiterate just the beginning, because I'll probably clip it right before that, there is nothing in here that can be used as actual legal counsel. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that's true. To give good legal counsel, you need to know a whole lot of facts, because some of this is very fact specific. And then you may need a lawyer in your own state, because I may not be able to help you. And there's some other issues there too. But yeah, you can take what I say today and it inform you when you meet with a lawyer or don't meet with a lawyer. But
Sure.
there's actual legal advice. It's not probably a good thing to count on.
So the one thing, I'll just start with the top thing.
Okay.
The fact that, and this actually came out just, I think, in the last day or two, through the press secretary, through an answer that she gave. But the fact that there's evidently nothing in writing about the vaccine being mandated by the White House is quite, I don't know what to do with that. How is that even legal?
Well,
That's the biggest thing.
over on this half, there's fact, and over here, there's opinion. So I don't want to get mixed up and sound the wrong trumpet. Much of what the government has been doing is ridiculous. It's outrageous. It would have never passed muster, but for COVID. COVID has created this environment where there's an emergency that's still being, I think, cooked up, stimulated. And so under that rubric, the government is just doing all kinds of things I don't think they're allowed to do. The problem is those who can afford to file suit, it'll be a year or so before they get the answer from the court. And so that won't help us much today. But anyway, yeah. So I think the government is doing things that need to be challenged at every level.
Okay. So the governors who are mandating, this is one of the questions, legal, are they even enforceable?
Well, here's the problem. Let's make two categories: government employees and contractors, and private employees, because it makes a difference.
Okay.
So on the private side of things, I do a lot of labor law, which is workplace law, whether it's discrimination or harassment or wrongful termination. And a lot of lawyers do that. It happens, unfortunately, all over the country all the time. And so this is what I think. The workplace can be a very special place to us. We may have favor with the employer and the coworkers. We may want to, maybe we have a long-term pension that's going to come in soon, or all those benefits that come with long-term employment. So when we have to sue an employer, I try hard first to try and settle it, try and negotiate it, treat them with honor, treat them with respect. Mostly they're just employees of HR who've got a lawyer telling them what they got to say. And so sometimes their hands are tied, but I hate to see blowing up the relationship, whatever you sewn into it and vice versa, over an issue. So I think, being a gentleman or a gentlewoman and giving honor, that's always a good recipe for success. So the point is, there are a couple of different scenarios. Let me back up. I've been watching the internet daily since this first came up and seeing reports from all over the country. And so there's different scenarios depending on whether or not you can do an exemption and it will get serious consideration, whether you can do testing instead, and this hasn't even come up too much. If you've already had COVID, your body should be enough. And that's a lawsuit just waiting to be pressed, because that would at least bring out the facts that everyone's trying to suppress, that there's and other alternative medical protocol. Sure. Now more than ever, people are coming forward and saying, no, they're wrong, and you can do this. So the science, maybe we're following the science, but not usually. So the point is this: there's a couple of scenarios. One is, if you don't sign this thing today, you're terminated. So what do you do when you face that? There's still a bunch of churning with unemployment law and all that traditional labor law that always applied in the workplace. And every state has slightly different laws. So you really got to make sure you know the law in your state. So, and there may be rights by contract. People who have signed a contract as their, part of their employment are in a different category than those kind of at-will people that they can let them go when they want. Right. So there's been, I want to say this, Mick, there's always been a number of protections for the employee. And those are the first place you look. unless you want to take on the government, unless you want to take on COVID and the media, then that's, if your goal is publicity or making the government accountable, that's worth going to court. It'll be expensive. But if the other is to keep your job, I think you got to look at the circumstances. Like, what are they? And here's one thing I think: religious exemption, I still think, is the best route to go. First of all, the government, by case law over the decades, the government has been told by the Supreme Court, you cannot inquire into somebody's religious belief to determine if it's sincere or not. Now, people have done it anyway, even though the law says you can't. But I've been talking about this with 7 new clients in the same boat. How would you craft a religious exemption? What did they do with it? Did they give you like 3 months while they review it and the panel reviews it, and then you can appeal that decision? So I don't know specifically what the private employers are doing. And it varies from employer to employer. You would expect that. But I want to say this too. I have a good friend who represents companies, has done labor law for corporations for years. And I was talking to him about this. And I said, Charlie, what's come out? What do we know now is firm law? It's already been decided. He says, nothing. We're making it up as we go along. But I know from his job is to give advice to the corporations. And I came to realize a lot of these corporations are in a squeeze. Like, they're really being put between a rock and a hard place. The government hasn't mandated it yet, but they're using a lot of persuasion and strong arm twisting to get them to do it, the companies. Also, some of the companies are getting letters from their clients saying, our clients will not come to your office and conduct a meeting unless you've tested. And so then the issue comes up, what's their liability if they don't do it? So I think the employers really didn't want to do this. They had enough things to deal with without this.
Right.
And they're not really the bad guy always. And that's why I think appealing to them. So I'm wondering, and we don't know, there haven't been enough exemptions filed nationwide to know if they're winning the day or not. Or if they're, do you know? You may know.
No, but we definitely we've had some accepted, some rejected here. We've had a lot of pressure on people to get the vaccine. Some have actually taken the vaccine. Really, they knew they shouldn't, but they did. And that's just where it is. They knew they were going to lose their job. We have a couple of people who have lost jobs. We did have one person out west who they actually called them back after 2 or 3 weeks and said, come on back. You don't have to sign the exemption, or, we'll accept you back. So we've had kind of every sort of kind of a thing in the particular state I'm in. I'm in a very, very left-leaning liberal state. It's very intense. They just went back into full mass cover up and everything all over again. It's like, oh my goodness, here we are. The whole thing has just been a serious nightmare, but a lot of employees are facing this really within the next few days. They have to make some decisions. So it was one of the reasons I wanted to come on and just like, let's see if we can point them in some kind of a direction. There are a couple questions I'll ask, and let me just ask the questions, then let you just go. If they send me home on leave with pay, but without letting me know if my religious exemption was accepted, what would be the next step? If they send me home without pay for refusing the vaccine and or the testing, if so, what's my next step? And I noticed today, actually, a judge stopped United from putting employees on leave. Because they basically said they're going to go on leave, and United had this thing where they said we're putting them on leave for 6 years. So they'd have to. It was a huge case, and they basically the judge evidently stopped them, said no, you can't put them on leave. So that was something today. Can they require weekly tests instead of vaccination? And they're charging a lot of money for those tests, right, in some places.
Who bears the cost, the employer or the employee?
Employee. Yeah, which they know it won't work. So I'm going to ask just one more, and then I'll ask some later. Sure. Is it discrimination? And you would know this in the area you work. Is it discrimination to require unvaccinated people to test weekly, since vaccinated and unvaccinated can both get and spread COVID?
Well, those are excellent questions. And I have to tell you, it allows me to say this, and lawyers hate to say this: we don't know. Like, everything's being tried for the first time. Legal theories that weren't advanced in the past are being pressed forward here and there and over here. We're getting good rulings over here, unfavorable over here. So my style of litigation, and maybe this doesn't really get us anywhere, is to communicate with them and find out what they really want and how can we satisfy what they really think they need, and have a dialogue, and then try and soften the things like, well, we're going to keep you on unpaid leave forever. You might as well fire us.
Right.
But they don't want to fire them because it could trigger unemployment and other issues, and even lawsuits.
Yeah.
All these companies stand to be sued one day by a boatload of employees or a couple single employees. And the way the Supreme Court works, if one person can get the Supreme Court, their decision will tell us all what to do to some extent. So the law will be cast based upon the set of facts that makes it to the Supreme Court. That doesn't help you very much. But I just want to say, my approach would be, first look at the state law, see if the state law already gives you some rights, you're in a protected class or whatever. And I don't know what Connecticut is, employment state, meaning no contract, you don't have to have a contract. So you can terminate somebody for no reason except an illegal reason: discrimination, their handicap, their religion, their gender, or whatever. So you can't do it that way, but that probably doesn't apply here. So I have to tell you, and I love to have a good answer, until we see what these people are all going to be doing, it's hard. I don't think you can keep them in a purgatory where they're just on leave. I think they're trying to encourage people to quit. And
Right.
Of course, New York has passed the rule, I don't know if it's New York City or New York State, that unemployment will not be available to those who don't go work anymore because of this.
Right.
I don't think they can even do that. How can they do that? But I don't know what Connecticut has done. And, during this last period of time, unemployment checks were pretty decent. But people they want to know their status. And so I would try and negotiate with the company. Why don't we not do that? Let's handle it this way. And let's not slam the door to pension and all those things. Because, I had this guy, he was talking to me. He's 6 months from retiring after 30 years with the same company. I'm sure they love him. He loves them. It's been his life. And if you refuse to take the vaccine, they say, the employer, you have to sign this thing saying you voluntarily quit. And I know, so that's the lawyers talking through the people, and I wouldn't sign that. So I'm kind of veering for a second. A number of lawyers and plaintiffs in the country have filed for injunctions, and they've been granted. The good thing about an injunction is it puts the matter in front of a judge and says, you got to do something now, put the rules in place, because the day will pass and we're forever harmed. And a lot of the judges have granted injunctions telling people they don't have to obey what the boss says today or tomorrow or until whatever. I think that's the best way to bring the issue in before a judge. Of course, you want to try, if you can, we're not supposed to do this, you want to find a convenient forum where the judge is going to be favorable based on their track record or whatever. And if you're going to file a suit, you try and choose there. None of these are answering your question, because really, I could have just shut up and said, we don't know yet. Typically, it's good not to resign, and it's not to quit. The other thing that everyone who's done this knows it, when people leave a place, they have to go to a new place. The recommendation from the old employer is really important. When you go to apply at a new place, and I used to work here, well, can we talk to your boss? No. So in this discussion, if you got to leave, it's good to kind of negotiate a good letter of recommendation, because you have to get a new job sooner or later.
Yeah.
I would assume. The other thing, I would want to get them to delay like 6 months and see what this storm is going to bring in the legal world.
Right.
So I haven't really answered your question at all.
Well, you've pointed us in some directions. One of the things that you actually said, I loved it, because you mentioned that one of the areas of discrimination could be against religious grounds. So if a religious exemption is being given and you are not able to keep your job because they do not respect or honor that religious exemption, is that not in fact discriminatory against religion?
Well, I have a good answer for that, I think, I hope. lawyers are not supposed to say this, but we're not supposed to delay things just to delay things. Ethically, we're supposed to not, throw monkey wrenches in the work. However, I think if people can get into court or get into the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission or somewhere, and then just let it ride until the law comes more fully developed, and it will change the outcome perhaps. So the thing is, you could allege discrimination, and then you go through a process and you got to fill out the papers and send it, and they review it. It could take months and months before they come back with an answer. And probably the employer won't want to mess with you then, because it will be evidence later that you treated them badly or whatever. So I don't know how employers would respond to that, whether they would just fight. You can't fire someone for making an EEOC complaint. You
Right.
cannot fire for that reason. So that gives them another little thing to litigate later. But so I think discrimination cases look closely at the facts to see whether the acts complained of amount to discrimination, as opposed to he was a lazy worker, he was showing up late here and there. But discrimination cases get proved all the time. And if you can prove that you were treated differently because of your religion, as opposed to your mandate's vaccine status, I think you got a winning case.
Yeah.
The problem, of course, is you don't get into court for a year or two. And do they have to give you lost wages? Do you get paid for all those months you were out? I mean, you can. That can be part of the damages if you were treated unfairly due to your religious beliefs. But what I think is less draconian is maybe that exemption. I've got a sample that I pulled from the New York case that was successful 2 days ago. It's a sample religious objection. And I think, anyone can write one up. They're not going to have too many components to them. But again, when the government is faced with a claim, this is my religious belief, they can't pry into, like, do you believe in the Trinity? Do you go to prayer meetings? All that kind of stuff. So I don't know then what happens. Do the employers get to keep you? And is that it? You won, the ball game's over. I don't know. I assume so. What would be the point of an exemption unless it exempted you from the requirement? But I don't know whether then they'll push weekly testing. The crazy fear that gripped so many people in America has caused them to accept really bizarre things, so we don't all die. So they may be able to, and I don't, if each company, because I've reviewed the packets from the company, they have different things you have to do the exemption. And then if you do this, we do that. And so each one may be unique to the person you're thinking of, but an exemption puts your foot in the door, and at least they got to stop and they got to think about it. If they deny it or decline it, then I think you have to go to court. Or you can wait 6 months so you've been fired and laid off and have no money, and then sue for what you did, whatever. I mean, that's a strategy call, I think. And I do think that if someone wants to see a lawyer, they should be careful not to take what I say if the other guy contradicts me, because a local lawyer in that right state will know usually more than I do. I hate to say that, but.
Sure. Yeah. Well, one more thing, and then I'm going to ask you just to ramble.
I think I did.
You've already rambled.
Well, I don't know. I could tell stories forever. Go ahead.
One person actually wrote, I guess they were given this advice, and I wanted to run it by you. They responded to their HR. I was confused just now when I received this notification that you're rejecting my religious beliefs. That makes no sense to me. My religious beliefs are deeply held. I do not recognize your authority to reject them. To be clear, I've notified you of my sincerely held religious beliefs. I expect you to accommodate them. Please govern yourself accordingly. And then they were told, stand, don't bow. Put your employer on notice. Then if you have people dealing with denied exemptions, address where to go from there. That's kind of what I think we're trying to do right now. They said, don't resign under any circumstance.
Right.
And then just, they brought up First Amendment Title, 7 of the Civil Rights Act of 64, right. Those various things. So I'll let you go with those things. I don't want to. Also one of the key facts of the vaccine is there is no FDA approval for any vaccine available in the United States. Yeah. None. And most people don't know that. They think the Pfizer is accepted. It's not. It's not the same vaccine at all that was approved by the FDA. So Okay, there we go. So that's about what I'm going to say, and then just let you kind of take that and run with that.
Well, some lawyers are really hungry for justice. They would do a lot of these big cases if their clients could afford it, because most people cannot afford to sue the FDA or the CDC or even whoever the wrongdoers are. And the problem is, in this mix, this soup, there's all kind of big shot people with a lot of clout, with a lot of lawyers. And when you sue, I sued Starbucks, I sued Purdue Chicken, some other EVMS, the medical school here. And when you go to sue them, you better have lawyers ready and you better have money. So unfortunately, unless you get a cause-oriented group of people, which they're springing up as we speak. There are groups that you may know about, I've heard about. Frontline Doctors is one that I hear only good things about. But anyway, I think there's a legal, pardon me?
Pushhealth.com is another one.
Well, there are probably many out there, and they may not all be on the level, but they probably will be some good ones. But the point is, if you're going to sue on a claim like that, and I think that's valid, the facts are there to support that. And there's a group internationally that's filing lawsuits too in The Hague, which is the international court. And we want to keep an eye on that. Even though The Hague doesn't really tell us what to do, it influences what we do here. I'm hoping that there'll be such an avalanche of cases, class action, hundreds, people not having enough employees to do their job, that the foolishness of this whole thing will become evident and sanity will return and we'll have a different world. But maybe that's hoping, that's faith and hope. Anyway, so the point is, I believe it's accurate what you said about the FDA having rushed it. And I think there's all kind of product liability cases coming down the road as more and more people, I hope that they don't, I hope everyone has no adverse reactions, but more and more people are going to be suing on the traditional med malpractice or product liability thing. So there are a lot of avenues out there. And probably the best thing, if anyone in your audience wants to do something in the legal realm, they should see a lawyer locally and say, in my state, given what the courts just ruled or the sister court ruled, what would be my best avenue? Because I think they're vulnerable as a legal matter on all these grounds. The biggest problem is, and I don't mean to be negative, but I bump up against this all the time, getting a court date for something like this. You can go in early and get an injunction that will freeze everything, hopefully, but then we need these things to be resolved. We need courts to speak into this whole area and clarify, applying the Constitution to this stuff, because there have been all kind of people overstepping the bounds set in the division of powers, in our nation, and it's really tilted in the other way. I have to hope that's going to swing back into the direction.
Yeah.
I don't know, I've thought about this a lot. Like my phones are ringing off the hook with people with the same kind of questions, including my son, by the way. So taking it really serious. Yeah. And I don't like to say I'm not exactly sure. Local advice from an attorney in that state is a good thing to do. And of course, you can piggyback off the other cases. There's a lot of reporting in the media and you can get the court opinions. Those court opinions that rule in our favor will contain the language or rationale, and you'll be able to see, you can piece together where you're coming from, not you or anybody that wants to do something legal. So.
That's good.
I'd love to talk with you forever, but I don't want to waste your time or your viewers' time.
That's fine. Is there anything else you want to add to anything?
I think this is something I feel passionately about. To preserve the relationship can be really important. When all this nonsense passes, everything may return to normal, and you really did like the boss and you really did like what you were doing. So I would try and, in all the communication and the pushing forth your exemption rights and all that, I would be as polite as I could be, because they really may agree with what you're saying, but they're paid to say the opposite. So I wouldn't burn any bridges, I think, because I think this is a temporary madness. And perhaps when the next batch of elections, we'll see a lot of things change, I hope.
Yeah.
So what do you think? I want to know what you think. I'm sure God has spoken to you.
Yeah. And, one of the things, Paul, that the Lord really spoke to me was he said, this is probably just a couple months ago. I mean, up till then, I was very diplomatic in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But a couple months ago, he just said, you got to help people. He said, this is important for you. He said, you're responsible to give them the truth that you have seen, that you perceived, but also things we know. I know people who are who have actually been affected negatively through the vaccine. I myself had COVID 1 year ago, and it about took me out. I was in bed for 9 days, solid flat on my back, and that was a very precarious time. But it was nevertheless, I felt I've got the immunity. I'm all right, and so I've listened to a lot of things. I've heard a lot of things. I've winnowed tons of stuff out because I just don't want to be a crazy man. But I also know there is enough valid truth that is indeed happening. Even though, when Jesus, when he told people, he said, listen, the day will come where there'll be separation between families. And of course, we're thinking of something, like what's happening in Mozambique, or something that happens under the former Iron Curtain or something like that. But the reality is it's happening in our world right now. It's happening in our cities, in our families. It is producing the greatest division I've ever seen amongst people. And that's a real problem, because Jesus wants us to be one. And somehow we got to figure out how to get this thing back to being one. And I'm going to pray for people, whether they've had the vaccine or haven't had the vaccine. If they get sick from having it, I'll pray for them. If they get sick from not having it, I'll pray for them. That's just the reality. That's the truth. That's called the kingdom of God. When it comes to legal things, I was thinking about this actually earlier before we began. I was thinking about the two main biblical cases, but it's also been through church history. But the two main biblical cases where many have been taken out, where there has been that, with Moses, when Pharaoh killed the children, and then with Jesus. And the truth of the matter is, I believe God has an incredible future for this generation. And it's obvious that the enemy has tried to take out this generation through abortion, but who's not to say he wouldn't try to take it out in any way he could? The level of discouragement in people, the level of depression that we're dealing with all the time, it's real. It's very real. And so I can't just simply negotiate and hope it gets better. It's like, what can I do to help people today bring it better? Because it may never get back to what we knew of. In fact, I don't think it will. I don't think it will ever get back to what we knew of normal. But because there's too many opinions in the pot right now, and this generation will move on. I remember Leif Hetland saying some things back a few years ago, and about if we don't do some things in this generation, we could lose it for another 40 years. And I'm like, oh Lord, no. Win it this time.
Things have gotten serious. Well, let me have another minute, do I?
Go. You go for as long as you want.
So I've got time. Up in the 60s, I protested against the war. I picketed, I marched, I was at some riots and all that kind of thing. And I was in that generation in a real way. But what I see today, I've watched politics and people have studied culture for a long time, I think. There's such an immunity to truth. It's like something's been scattered out there like some fairy dust, and people cannot hear the truth, or maybe they don't want to act, so they won't receive it, so it stays out there. But it creates all kind of friction and stress and strife among neighbors, families, workers. But here's what you know, and I know: we can still shine. Arise and shine, your light has come. Yep. Deep darkness will cover the earth, but so we have a great opportunity to love and reach out in the opposite spirit and not get caught up in all those bickering things. At the same time, I can go to court during the day and try and hit a home run and pin someone back. I don't mean to be boastful, but I think there's emerging and arising a group of folks who are really getting a handle on what we do next. It's clear. I don't know if it's clear to you. Something's happening in our country that's not normal. And there's goals beyond the pandemic, goals beyond the mandate and
Absolutely.
lockdowns. And we have to always also keep an eye on them. But the good thing, I think, it's being aired, it's being exposed.
Right.
So hopefully enough people will wake up and say, wait, let me think about that again. Let me think about the FDA process and how that happened so quickly. Let me think about Mr. Fauci. Where did he come from? Who does he really speak for? Anyway, I could go on in that vein, but there's still a lot for us to do. So it's exciting.
Yeah.
The new normal might be closer to God's normal, and that would be great. We'll get there. I don't want to go this way, but if this is the way we got to go.
Right. And that's the whole thing, I mean, we know in the Old Testament, we know Ezekiel was told, hey man, if you don't warn somebody, I'm requiring this at your hands. Now, I understand I'm New Testament. I understand that whole deal. But the truth of the matter is that there's something about, blessed are the peacemakers, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And peacemaking doesn't mean that you're just a passive person. It means you're bringing peace. You're bringing peace to people's lives. And, that's what I see, attorneys, you're advocates, you're trying to bring peace out of what is incredible tumult. And so in this whole scenario, I think I've just seen that it's a piece that I, as a pastor, I, as somebody in ministry, I have to address. I got to help people that aren't sleeping at night. I have to help people who are losing jobs. And in the day, I have to do whatever I can. I don't know how many religious exemptions I've written for people. I want to help people. I just want to help people. And
yeah, this gentleman who was talking to me about, he's worked 29 and a half years and they're forcing him out the door tomorrow. He was heartbroken. That really affected, that was his home away from home. Many people, that their job is that. And so there's a relational breakdown. The people are really hurt by that. And I don't know how to help them, in that realm. I mean, I do, I pray for them and etc.
Sure.
But so I have the privilege and good fortune of having a law degree and a license. So I want to use what skills I have to address this if enough clients coalesce or enough people group together, because that's a necessary ingredient in all of it. So I don't know how to keep in touch with, I know how to keep in touch with you. I'd love to check in with you every once in a while, and things are coming across my desk that are giving answers to some of the questions you asked. Yep. And it's solidifying the way our system works. And it may be controversial. Alabama might say this, and then Georgia says this, and then there's mixed law, and then it goes to Supreme Court 3 years later, and then they say, okay, this is what it is. But we can agitate and advocate and play a role in that. So, I can. And so I'm eager to hear what everyone else is wanting to do, just if I can learn from it.
That's so good. Well, I'm grateful that you came on today. I think that, Paul, I still believe we are headed for the greatest harvest we've ever seen. I believe, and in fact, I know that is actually occurring. Some of the places in the world that have the most persecution, actually, the church has been exponentially increasing beyond what it ever did before COVID. That God's growing his church, and I believe that that's for us here in the States as well. So I think we might be looking at something that looks a little different than what we thought 10 years ago. But I'm actually excited about it. I think it's going to look like Jesus a whole lot more. And I like that. So.
Well, I want to say this. I meant to say it earlier. Did you know Mark Mosley with Iris?
Yes, I think I met him one time.
He and his wife were the most wonderful people on the planet. And they welcomed me into Pemba, helped me to get oriented and acquainted at all different levels. They were wonderful people. Then they went to China. But you may have seen that he passed from COVID.
I did.
That hurt. That kind of got me a little bit more motivated. Like, even though you don't know who the target is necessarily with COVID, but we can know if we wanted to know. I think we're going to know one day, and I think we could know if we wanted to know.
Yeah.
But we know who's behind it. But
from December through January of this last year, I literally lost 10 friends to COVID.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't, 9 friends and one who was Well, he was my brother's brother-in-law. I mean, yeah, I mean, real stuff.
And it gets very real. And I thought Mark would live forever and had such an impact upon our friends. But some good will come. God will redeem it somehow.
Absolutely.
And we'll be eyewitnesses.
Amen.
All right.
And thank you so much, Paul.
It is my pleasure. It's an honor to talk to you.
We'll just have to chat sometime and just chat.
Yeah, please. And let me know your meetings so I can zoom in on some of them.
Absolutely.
All right.
And just to let you know, I'll cut this right here, but this is going to post tonight at 7. So it will be a live feed there. And if you want to respond to questions on the feed, go for it.
Would it be over Zoom or a phone line or how?
It's going to be on 3 platforms, so just pick one. But it's going to be on Facebook, it's going to be on YouTube, and it's going to be on Rumble.
So can I just find it on YouTube, and how would I contribute?
It'll be on our channel, which is if you just type Danny Steyne Mo, you'll find our channel and it'll be live there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Now I got something to do tonight. Hooray.
Yeah, fun.
Can I take my tie off yet?
Oh, you won't be seen, so it's all right. You can do it with your pajamas on.
Good to see you, brother. Love you, and glad I met you long ago.
Thank you.
Glad we got to worship together. That's such.
I missed that. We need to do it again.
Oh, geez. Yeah. All right, man. We'll do it.
All right. Bless you.
All right.